All right, welcome to week 18. We are going to talk about vendor management. In the first part, we're going to talk about what is vendor management and kind of dive into that. And then part two, we're going to talk about building a relationship. We're going to kind of get into contracts and some other stuff in there. So let's start off. What is vendor management? It's just the process of utilizing your vendors to maximize your business. Vendors in this instance can mean anybody you're paying to do something for you, whether that's deliver a product or service. That's what we're talking about when we talk about vendors. So first, how to choose the right ones. You need to determine what types of vendors you need. That seems obvious, but again, service-based means services. That could be a consultant. That could be a janitor. Product means you're getting products and services, and that could be I'm getting a case of whatever product I need in order to make my products to sell, but they could also provide certain services along with those products. So how many vendors do you need really depends upon your business, what you do. For services like for service oriented businesses like accounting or law, you might only need one. If you're talking about like vendors in terms of delivering products, like it could be I need pens and papers and that types of stuff. But you would also have the other vendors outside of that. You have your own legal counsel. Lawyers have lawyers have accountants. Your law office might have a janitor. Like there's all sorts of vendors that you could potentially have for your business. If you're selling products, you could have one vendor. You could have dozens of vendors. We suggest that you have more than one vendor just to kind of spread it out. But you might not be able to, depending upon what it is that you're purchasing. Um, the best plan is to have your primary vendor and then backup vendors for everything. But that's totally up to you and your ability to have backups because it might not be available. The more vendors you have, the better options you could potentially have, but there's going to be more juggling in terms of scheduling, ordering, paying, all of that back end type stuff when dealing with the vendors. There's going to be logistics issues in terms of receiving orders, ordering orders again. We talked about a little bit about that in week 9. You can go back and look at that a little bit. One benefit is there's always somebody else to pick up the slack. So if you're ordering from vendor A and they are out of product, they're having fulfillment issues, whatever it is, you can go to order B. That's great. And when you think about the backups, so let's say you order everything from vendor A, but they run out. Your backup could just be an online retailer, it could be the hardware store. That could be your backup vendors physically going somewhere to purchase something. The benefit of having multiple vendors and kind of spread everything out is you could be getting better costs, better deals from these vendors, but you want to think about the cost of your time to place all those orders, manage all those orders, receiving the like all of those other things. Like if you go back again to week 9, that economic order quantity, there's a lot of stuff that goes into managing your inventory that a lot of people don't think about because they just look at the bottom line cost. It cost me this much to order. This is what a case of whatever costs. That's great, but it costs you time to order. It costs you time to receive. Like there's a lot of costs in there. It costs you time to hold it. So again, think about all that. Having fewer vendors means that you have fewer orders, fewer things that you need to manage, but you spend less time on the phone, online, placing those orders. You could consolidate a lot of stuff and get bulk rates with vendors. A lot of them have order minimums, so you might be forced to do that because you have to have a certain amount of whatever for a truck to even show up at your place of business. And the larger your account is with a vendor, the more pull you have with that vendor, the more important you are to that vendor. So if you're just a small fish in a big sea, you might not get the same respect you would as being a bigger fish in that same sea. One pro tip for y'all: don't constantly switch vendors based upon costs. We know a lot of people who do this, and the thing is, you can get a bad name. Vendors talk with each other just like you probably talk to your competition about vendors and all of that, and who's good and who's bad, who's got a good reputation and who doesn't. You have a reputation as well. You will with the vendors, so don't switch. They don't like that. There's a good chance they'll all just stop selling to you. One thing you need to consider when you're working with a vendor is their culture. You need to figure out whether or not you care if it matches yours, because that could be something in terms of that you can pass down to your customers is that, our vendors have the same beliefs that we do. And the people are more and more today, like people are concerned about the source and not necessarily where it comes from. So they want something to be organic and local, and they claim to be all small business centric, and then they go shop at Costco. Again, you can get organic and local, and maybe some local stuff at Costco, I don't know, but you can get that stuff from Amazon and for cheaper, but they don't really care that Amazon's selling it. So think about that. You want to think about whether or not the vendor's employees represent who you are as well. That's important to think about. And you can always ask your vendors for references in your industry, because they're probably going to ask you for references. So from other vendors, so you can, feel free to ask them for references from other customers as well. Think about scheduling. So there's, again, for scheduling for deliveries, scheduling for orders, that's important. Scheduling for the services. So like, let's say you're going to hire a janitor for your office building. That's great. And they're going to come in after hours. Do you need to run background checks on them, on the company? Do they run background checks? Those are some things you might want to think about. And then finally, think about ordering parameters. So for small businesses, this is one of the hardest barriers for them is hitting that minimum order. So work with your rep, and you could possibly split orders with another customer. If it's not something that's necessarily that has an expiration date or that has a short shelf life, you could order in bulk and just find some other place to store it. So you're going to offset the storage costs by the money that you save by ordering in bulk. But again, work with your rep. They're in sales. They're always going to try and figure out a way to work with you because they want your business. So work with them, be honest, be open, be transparent. And they should, if they're a good sales rep, they should try and work with you and figure out whatever they can do to get you the product so that they can make money. We already talked about lead times a bit, but think about that, how long it takes to get the product to your building, how long it takes to receive it, when you can place orders, all of that. And then lastly, the last thing that you want to consider in the ordering parameters is the days and cutoff times. Do they do weekend deliveries? Is there a cost for off-day deliveries? Do they even do off-day deliveries? Just think about things like that. So that's it for the first part of vendor management. The second part we're going to get into is going to be about building relationships.